So anyway, I wanted to do the background and the business statement because, of course, we don't do any stuff inside of Devon unless we have a business case for it. And then, of course, Mike is going to do how we did it. And then I'm going to come back and say, so what did we gain out of it? Because if we didn't gain anything from a business perspective, why the heck did we do it? So that's kind of the flow that we're going to do, although I've certainly encouraged Mike to keep me honest in my slides, and I know he's encouraging me to keep him honest in his. So one of the things that really pushed our project forward was that Devon overall as an enterprise did a risk assessment, both in the US and here in Canada. And out of the top 4, the top 3 were things we couldn't control, things like commodity prices, being able to get our product to Tidewater, those kinds of things that we couldn't control. The number 4 risk in Canada was data. That really resonated, and it really made an impression on our management. So one of the things that we quickly got was a lot more traction the minute that risk assessment came out. So the other thing was that we were wanting to plan and become even better. We are by all means a high business partner with our regulator, but we wanted to become even better. We wanted to be proactive and plan for once in our lives and not be reactive. So when we were looking at creating a solution, that was one piece to it. We wanted to align with all of our enterprise standards on enterprise tools and become, again, more standard with our enterprise. Although we have different source systems, we were going to use the same tools if at all possible and the same processes, using a standard. We wanted to make a divisional impact because if we could prove that business case, we could get a lot more money. So with a lot more money, we can build a better solution. We wanted to meet our clients clearly told us, we don't want to wait for you to give us the data. We want to just go and get it when we need it at that moment. We don't want to restrict that data flow. So my team was a choke point. We recognized that, we worked as hard as we could, and I often said to my team, you have amazing results in spite of the tools we give you. So we wanted to do something to address that really big common problem. Then we wanted to simplify, because simplifying, of course, really helps. So this is our whole journey. As you can see, it was a very lengthy journey. However, it was a lot of stopping and starting. If you can see the top broad, oh shoot, wrong button. Whoops, middle button. Thank you. This one right here. That is the whole divestiture that completely derailed. So originally we started this project, we had a huge divestiture of all our conventional properties. Well, out of that we became a very different organization. So we needed to rethink, retool, step back, replan. So then we started again our planning, as you can see, really started in Q14, the last quarter 14. And then really, when you really see this, it's truly amazing to look at. We didn't start really laying code down for quite some time. So we did do some great planning, we engaged vendors, and we got up to speed on what our requirements were before we sat down and did anything. I think that was pretty key to the success. So what did we build? This is what we deployed in Q4 2015. So this is what we built, this is what we deployed. We did not stray from our vision of done at that moment. We also completely told our users, this is not going to be a perfect solution. This is going to be a really good solution, and we are going to continuously improve. And that is the way our industry works. We are not going to launch the perfect thing because there is no such perfect thing, because our industry constantly changes. So instead, let's approach this as a continuous improvement project. So now Mike is going to tell you, although I've made it very easy here, it looks really cool. We did it over a long period of time. Now Mike is going to talk to you about the challenges of what we really did to lay out the solution, technically. And hopefully he does the buttons way better.
This is the test. Oh, no. Actually, I definitely give a lot of credit to Devon Canada. They'd worked out a lot of issues on their own already by the time we showed up on the scene. And in particular, a lot of discussions had gone on with stakeholders, not to steal from Floyd's later slides, but there had been a lot of discussion, a lot of planning. So by the time we actually got into the actual data issues, there'd been a lot of groundwork laid. which made our lives a lot easier. But that doesn't mean it was necessarily a slam dunk. Anyways, a quick overview of scope. I mean, we refer to it as the well header, but in fact, it's the more that Floy and I have presented this to different groups, the more it's become clear that it's actually a little more than header. Those 60 attributes that were mentioned include indicators from land, or from SAP in the financial side, or from core data, I think, right? Drilling and so on. So there were a number of other aspects of data that were creeping into the header. But the header definition was collected by the stakeholders. They said which attributes they wanted to see. Large number of wells, 8 to 10 systems of record. The DBN_star are 3 sources that are implemented that are Devon specific that allow them to either, we call it underwriting or overriding data as it comes in from other sources. Well core landman, the electronic well file, the EMDM, which is their enterprise master data management out of the US office, and IHSE obviously. The directional surveys, we had 400,000 surveys. And then on the document front, at this point we're at over 960,000 documents loaded into the e-well file system and tied to the wells within the system. The first big technical hurdle we faced, and you'll notice on the title, we referred to these technical hurdles as mind gymnastics, because we would lock 3 or 4 of us in a room and with 2 or 3 whiteboards and hammer through it, and we'd be wasted by the end of it. But it really felt like gymnastics that we were doing, trying to understand how the data would fit together best. The biggest one was, how are we going to build out a well hierarchy? A lot of the implementations that Energy IQ has done to date have been in the US industry, where just looking at the API, you can kind of work out pretty quickly how the structure works. But in the Canadian context with the UE, that's not going to work that way. So fortunately, in the public data available, there are indicators as to how the components of a Canadian well hierarchy actually stitch together. We worked out a way that by ordering the load by source and by level type, and then coordinating our matching between both the UE initially and the system of record ID later on, you can actually manage the hierarchy quite well in your loading process. So that was mind gymnastics number 1. Number 2 was, we called them explicit and implicit records. And it was interesting through the project actually, and again I'm going to steal from Floyd's later slides, the whole project team had to get on a common language, and not just about what is a well, although that was one of the initial ones, but on this notion of explicit and implicit records. As we built the hierarchy, there were explicit records that were coming in from the sources. We were building implicit records into the hierarchy that may or may not be visible in the end result to users, depending on what their role is in the corporation, the organization. So the building out the well hierarchy was this interesting challenge of how do we expose some of it to users initially and not overwhelm them with this new concept of a well hierarchy when they've been looking in all of their geoscience applications to date at data a certain way that isn't actually the full hierarchy. The third challenge, auxiliary data, we had to bring in some of these other data types, and the debate was, do we put them deep into the PPDM model in specific tables that might be driven towards that are designed for some of this, or do we attach them within the system as auxiliary data, as make them appear to be pieces of the well header, and version those so that the gold record actually contains those attributes as well. So things like the Devon UWI, the DUI that came out of their EMDM system, or like the an SAP cost center, for instance. And finally, the auditing requirements, working out what are we auditing, why are we auditing, what are we going to do with the audited data, the history of it, and how are we going to be collecting that, how often, etc. So there's a lot of discussion around that. Just as an example of that, actually the very first mind gymnastics session around the hierarchy, we literally had to draw out how IDs and how keys are going to get assigned, and how we're going to, which records are explicit, and implicit. we had several boards that looked like this, and we ended up having to take pictures just so we could remember what we did. Finally, another challenge we had was, how do we make some of the data accessible to different groups in different ways? And obviously the question of views comes up, database views. But what we found increasingly was, because from Sloy's last slide, you'll notice there were a number of applications involved. They're all hitting, there were a number of databases involved, a number of applications involved. We ended up coming up with this notion of an integration or a presentation schema, so that all of the coordinating database views that the different applications would touch on would be in that one presentation schema. By the time we were done, we had this standard all-in-one level for users, so we exposed the industry view to the users. But we also had a different, very significant view for data management that showed the complete hierarchy. There was a view for the, we had to decide what's real time, what's materialized, how are they going to perform, what are the expectations, how timely does it have to be. I'm stealing all your time, sorry, I'm almost done. eval file, we had to have a view that supported the eval file system, we had to have a view that supported GeoCortex and the mapping systems. And in the end, we had to figure out also how to tie together LiveLink with rig records, with TDM, and make sure that all of those documents were going to get crawled, categorized, classified, and tagged to the web. So, in a nutshell, those were the challenges we had in this, but the end result was very, very beneficial, I think, for Devon Canada, and certainly a great challenge for us.
Thanks, Mike. So one thing I do want to stress here is that I come from the data management group and I sit inside business. So I am not an IT person, although in many of my roles previous to Devon, I sat both in IT and business. So I do have kind of a unique skill of being able to sit down with highly technical people and sometimes speak at least a low level of their language so that I can get across the concepts that I need to have done from a business perspective. So one of the things I did want to point out is that that's one of the reasons that I think I certainly enjoyed my time on this project. So what do we have now? Well, it has significantly, again, continuously improved over the year. What we have done now is integrated even more highly with our EMDM system down in the US and pushed out GUIs into all our source systems. So we have now gone to that non-intelligent system of reference. So, and we also have allowed a lot of other things to be happening, which then allow data services. We have system of record IDs. We manage all of that both as a kind of a compound between the EMDM and our, what we're calling our CTDM. By the way, we call it C because it's in Canada. It's also in the US. The US uses TDM as well. So again, using a common platform is standard. So this is what is currently in place now, and you can see that actually I've put a lot more where we're talking more about where the users are self-serving from. So they can do it here, they can do it here, they can certainly do it from TDM. We have a GeoCortex map. So we have lots of different portals of getting that information out, and that again was pretty key. So one of our founding things was to simplify, because again, using a standard integration tool, we use Informatica inside of Devon, and standardizing integrations and simplifying integrations. So one of the ways of doing that, and we used to show this at the very beginning when we were trying to socialize the project, was talking about we want to simplify to a hub-styled delivery system. So again, using pretty much the same vision that OKC used, but in the Canadian context. And by simplifying, we create the same rigor and the same processes in those integrations, and we also cut a ton of costs because we're not maintaining and sustaining a whole lot of integrations. So that has done a tremendous cost reduction for us. One of the other things is, by doing this type of model, you get one answer consistently. One consistent answer becomes the truth, and the truth becomes well adopted. So factors in the adoption, well, I think we have to say that we made it very comfortable for our users to adopt this. And Mike touched on that because we looked at our presentation layer and we said, okay, we're ready for what is the well levels, but we may not have all our users ready to do that. They do it naturally, whether they know it or not, in what they do. Our PVR, for example, is 100% on the completion level. But they don't speak about it currently within our walls. So we want to slow walk them for that adoption. So how can we do that? We do it through that presentation or integration schema. And we present it in the way that they're comfortable. So our geoscientists get a view that looks the same as they would see in an AccuMap. We're going to use the wheel and spoke and push out all the information so it all looks consistent now. We're going to expose the relationships for those who want to start learning and adopting the language. We created an entire, although Mike touched on it, he didn't steal my thunder because I could go on and on. We came up with well over 100 vocabulary things that we had to create so that we could start to socialize what we were doing and to talk with clarity both in our project and when we're talking divisionally. So this is very much a divisional. It started out as a geoscience solution, but as we focused in and became a much smaller and focused organization, we knew we had to do this at a divisional level. And so we needed to be able to speak that language across the functional areas in our division. So we did have to come up with that. Again, it's a standard vocabulary. We have published it. It has been adopted. So that's one of the things. We actually stayed true to our scope. So we did listen, we did adapt it when it made sense, but we didn't waver from what done was because we couldn't. We had an aggressive timeline and we had to deliver. Now let's see if I can push the right button again. So one of the things was we didn't want to be the holdup. So this is the impact and this is what we did. And as you can see here, we actually got a lot of artifacts in our electronic well file. We delivered that, and we're calling it kind of more a well identity record for the division. We certainly don't want to call it header anymore because we have expanded it so much. We have division of interest, we have cost center, we have hierarchy, we have pads and pairs. We even created something called drainage for our geoscientists so that they can naturally group and talk about groups of wells the way we do our business. So we really truly respected process. Okay, so what's our big impact? I think this is amazing. And this, whoops, Floyd, back. Sorry. How do I go back again in the middle, right? This is where we really had a big impact. Look at that. We talk about saving costs, Trudy. We actually, one of our people took our data because for the first time he could use our system of record index, our cross-reference, and delve into many, many systems very, very easy, and stood up a data service to do that in a repeatable manner. He actually came up with an amazing amount of decreases we could do in our lease operating expenses. And actually, I mean, it was truly, we gave him wings simply by delivering the hub. We didn't create the thinking that he has, and it's amazing, thank you. But it really did give. And we are actually, some of our users are really surprising us. So asset retirement, LOE, and greenhouse gas are our bigger adopters because they're looking at new processes, so they don't have any legacy, so they can use ours as the go forward. We've also stood up a standard Devon status. So where the excitement is, so we always ask, is this nirvana? Of course not. We have so much more to do. We're a continuous improvement attempt at this, and so we want to extend the electronic well file roles. We want more data visually. We certainly want more notifications. We have over requests for 8 more notifications. We have 21 data service requests outstanding. So we have a high adoption rate. Our biggest problem right now is our industry downturn, and of course our downturn in funding. So we have all these things sitting there wanting to be done and queued up, really great adoption, but our resources are slim and our money is even slimmer. So we are delivering and moving forward as much as we can, and we are moving forward, and as we move forward, of course, we actually even then get more requests because then it gets into more functional areas and they start, again, adopting even more. So one of the things that is still our challenges is that it is a complex solution. Very few people inside of the Devon walls really understand the impact. So if we change something on, and I'm always talking with our sustainment team, I'm always talking about right and left sides. And I said, if we change over here, we have to be careful what's happening over here. And what about our data services? I see this as a 3D entity, and I see things happening. Very few people understand the complexity of it, which leaves us at a risk, you know, should any of us win the lottery and buy an island in the tropics. And then the other thing is that we really are using training and going out and trying to make sure the language is understood in the organization, so that when we do talk to people and present this to them, they understand what we're actually presenting.